I feel like people go grab their beers, they go freaking take a shit, all before the main event. What's going on, bros and hoes? Welcome to the Kevin Hoops Show. I am your host, Kevin Hoops. Hopefully that was obvious, and we're getting right into UFC 281 today. Now, going into UFC 281, I saw that there's questions literally asking how good UFC 281 will be. Actually, I don't know how that's a question. You have two title fights. You have two top-ranked, I think, 1 and 2, 1 and 3 guys with Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. It's a stacked card. Come on. Each fight towards the end of the year, I feel like with the UFC, just gets better and better. They have to, with fighting in general, as the winter comes around, it usually tends to drop in viewership. So you might want to try and stack your cards and really try and have the best card possible. And I think that's what we're getting right now with UFC 281. Getting into the actual fights, we're starting off with Isreal Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. Now, they have already fought once, and they've already fought twice, and this is going to be the third bout. You have Alex Pereira actually winning twice. I really don't think the first one is talked about a lot. The first one, it went all, I think, 8 or 12 rounds in kickboxing, and Alex Pereira ended up winning in the decision. The second one was a clear win by Pereira. He knocked Izzy right to his ass, knocked out completely. So Isreal Adesanya honestly could be the underdog in the fight if you really want to think of it that way. But I really think he's going to have a big advantage just with all the experience he has going 5 rounds in the cage, specifically in MMA as well. So I really think it's going to be a back and forth, but probably going to be going to Izzy. I mentioned it earlier, and I think it's already underrated, and the women's fights usually are underrated, and they usually deliver. That's the one thing I feel like people go grab their beers, they go freaking take a shit, all before the main event, just because it's a women's fight. And I think that is a stupid thing to do. It's just as entertaining to me as a regular main event if it's for a belt. And this one's for a belt. And Zhang Weili's had a belt before. She's lost it. And now she's going up against Carla Esparza, who's not only has the belt right now, but also is on a 6-fight win streak, which the momentum of any fight win streak, it's really hard to stop sometimes. It always ends. Don't get me wrong. It always ends. And this could be that fight. But sometimes it's hard to stop someone while they're hot. The big question is, when are they going to stop being hot? And let me tell you, beating Rose Namajunas is one of the biggest hot things you could do when it comes to going into your next fight. You have a lot of momentum after a big fight like that, and you're gaining a lot of confidence because Rose was thought as one of the GOATs in women's MMA in that weight division. Not to also mention her beating Rose back in 2014, which I think just adds to her confidence. It just proves that she knew that she was the better fighter going into that second fight and proved herself right. So she's going to have a lot of momentum. And if you really want to compare stats, Zhang Weili lost to Rose twice. And I think that's saying a lot because if Esparza beat her twice and has proven it time and time again that she's above that skill level, it's kind of a no-brainer of saying who's going to win, but that doesn't take away that it's not going to be an entertaining fight, all right? That's all I'm going to say on that. Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. I think this has been a fight waiting to happen in the UFC. You have two of the most hottest guys in the lightweight division right now going head-to-head. Not only are they both big strikers, but they both have a good ground game. It's been proven from Poirier going against Khabib. Yeah, he did get submitted, but so has everybody else. And you saw it with Michael Chandler when he faced Charles Oliveira, which, yeah, he got submitted, but at the same time, he has been wrestling in college at a high division level. So I think that that's a big factor to take in. Will Chandler take this to the ground, or is he going to keep it more standing? I think if you look at his past fights, he's going to try and keep it standing. The same way Poirier does. These guys both have shown a lot of heart. They've both said that they leave everything out on the mat. They are going out there to put everything out. They're putting out 110%. They're putting everything out on the mat. The chances of this getting bloody is probably 99.99999. All right? Like, it can't get any better than this. I think this going into the next two fights is going to be that much better, especially that it's not this is a main event level fight, and we're getting a third fight. So I think that that's going to be a great factor. Now, this isn't exactly a rank 1 versus rank 2 guy, but it basically, I think, it can be. It can be that main event level type of event. You've got Dustin Poirier, who's fought for the title multiple times. You've got Michael Chandler, who's fought for the title against Charles Oliveira, and so did Dustin Poirier. They both lost. Whoever wins could be facing number 1 or number 2. Or maybe for the title. No, I doubt that, just because Islam is probably going to fight who knows one of the biggest fighters in the UFC right now. But I do think that this fight is going to be a good factor of where we're going to see the next fighter going up against the next top-ranked guy, and maybe fighting for the belt again. Who knows? Frankie Edgar, Chris Gutierrez. I think this one could go either way, but most likely probably going to Chris Gutierrez. You've got someone who's 31 in his prime. He only has 3 losses, and he's probably gained a lot of knowledge since he's got into the UFC. If he can show that he can beat a legend like Frankie Edgar, it's going to be an upwards trajectory for his career, and I think that that's a big thing probably that he's thinking about right now. And with an 18-3 record, I think that's going to be a real good chance for him to win. But at the same time, you're going up against Frankie Edgar, and you never know what you can get from him. He's been a very, very skilled fighter in the past, and we've seen a lot from him. But another thing that I think that we have to take into account is that he's 41. You know, we've seen Anderson Silva and multiple other fighters at that old age just completely not be there. And with a loss in his last fight, I don't think that he has that momentum that we've been talking about. Sometimes with wins, you have a lot of momentum going into fights, and that's a thing that's not talked about a lot. No matter what, it's going to be a good fight. We usually get a good fight with Frankie Edgar. And this up-and-comer Chris Gutierrez, I think, you know, who knows what we can see. I think he's going to prove himself after this fight. He's going to be a name if he does get this win. The first fight of the main card, the one that gets it all started, Dan Hooker versus Claudio Puelles. Dan Hooker is probably one of the most inconsistent fighters that we've seen. We've thought he was going to be a rising star and ended up not being the rising star at all. Not saying he's a bad fighter, but with a 21-12 record, I think it's very questionable on if Dan Hooker is going to win. I think a lot of people have thought he's going to win in a fight and almost guaranteed he's going to win, and he's not showed up. He's 32, so I think maybe his chin is done. Maybe he's getting to that age. Maybe it's hitting him a little fast. And going up against a 26-year-old phenom. No, he's not a phenom, but, you know, I just like to say, who knows, you know? You never know what kind of fighter we can get from Peru, which, you know, has a good fighting background. I like the type of South American type of fighting culture they have down there. So I think with a 13-2 record, he definitely is young. He definitely is wet behind the ears. But at the same time, he's going up against a pretty inconsistent fighter. With that, will Dan Hooker take this fight very seriously? I hope so. I also hope that Claudio really has prepared himself and we get an entertaining start to the freaking main card. That is what we all want, correct? At the end of the day, that's all I want. I want an entertaining card. If Dan Hooker shows up, good for him. If Claudio Puelles shows up, good for him. I don't care who freaking wins. I just want a good fight. On the ground or standing up. I just want an entertaining fight. That is all I think any of us want. And I think we're going to get that. The prelims are even looking pretty good. We've got Dominic Reyes and Andre Petroski, one of the UFC finalists. Or he actually won the UFC. I'm sorry, he won the Ultimate Fighter. He didn't win the UFC. He won the Ultimate Fighter this past year. And it was actually the first return of the Ultimate Fighter. It wasn't just the Ultimate Fighter. Let me triple correct myself. But I do think that he is an up-and-coming guy that is going to be someone to look out for. And with that, I think we're going to get an entertaining card. So tune in for the next upcoming days. We're going to have a lot of videos coming out on the upcoming fights and really going in depth on some of these. So tune in and have a great fucking day.